Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose. And Microsoft just gave us more clarification for their Xbox exclusive strategy. This has been one of the biggest questions all year long, and, getting a straight answer from them hasn't exactly been an easy thing to do, but I do think there's at least one really interesting detail about what they just said in this specific statement. So we're going to get into all of that, and ultimately, if this strategy will pay off for them. Then also the Game Awards hype continues to ramp up because it sounds like there's going to be some massive, and I mean some massive announcements that fans will definitely want to tune in for later this week. So stick around and we'll talk about that as well. But let's just go and jump right into things, starting off with Marvel Rivals. Now, this game released last week on December 6th, and it's already gotten off to one of the fastest starts that we've ever seen. If you look on Steam database, you'll see that it immediately reached a peak high of 480,000 concurrent players. And this apparently is only a fraction of how many players it's reached thus far. Tencent announced that in just 72 hours alone, it reached a massive 10 million players across all platforms, being Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. Now, of course, this is a free-to-play game, so this doesn't exactly tell us the entire story. We've seen other free-to-play live service games get off to a fast start and then ultimately fall off after a few months. Ubisoft's now discontinued X-Defiant is one such example of this. But for the time being, Marvel Rivals is doing exactly what it needs to do. It's reaching a massive audience, and from what I can tell, it's being fairly well received. It currently has a 78% positive rating on Steam, which, for a live service game, that's pretty decent. Just for comparison's sake, Overwatch 2, being its main competition, has a 21%, and since the release of Marvel Rivals, Overwatch 2 has actually dropped to its lowest player count on Steam since its launch. So if anything else, Marvel Rivals is making quite an early impression, and maybe that's to be expected given its use of popular Marvel characters, but that is one of the things that stands out about this game. It seems like Marvel Rivals does have pretty good character designs, and that's not necessarily a given in today's world for established characters, so I think it's at least noteworthy, and now we just kind of need to see if Tencent can capitalize on this early success. Now, going into 2025, there seems to be a lot of mystery when you look at the release schedule for next year. It just doesn't seem like there's a lot of confirmed games for 2025 outside of the first 3 to 6 months. And, well, we might have just gotten our reason why that's happening, or at least some of it. So this comes from Bloomberg, and they posted a report about GTA 6, and check this out. They said anticipation is so high that some competing game publishers are waiting as long as possible to commit to their release dates for the fall, according to people familiar with their deliberations who asked not to be identified because they weren't authorized to speak publicly. The publishers want to see whether GTA 6 will make its deadline or slip into 2026, these people say, and they're determined to keep their own games far, far away. So, there you go. And I think this makes perfect sense when you start to think about it. GTA 6 is very possibly the most anticipated game ever made. It's coming off of a game that managed to sell 200 plus million copies, and it's still going strong thanks to GTA Online. And then if you just look at Rockstar's pedigree as a whole, they've painstakingly earned their reputation. Their last big release, being Red Dead Redemption 2, is probably one of the most perfect games from last generation. So, there's just a certain expectation when it comes to Rockstar games, and if I were developing a game, there's no way that I would want to release it anywhere near GTA 6. That seems like a pretty good way to get yourself overshadowed. Now, at the same time, though, they did mention in this report that they have missed several deadlines for GTA 6, so despite Take-Two's confidence that it will release in fall of 2025, it's not necessarily 100% confirmed until they give us an exact release date, and it seems like that's what publishers are ultimately waiting for. They want to see that confirmed date before they make an announcement themselves. Oh, and Palworld, being one of 2024's most successful games, just revealed a rather interesting change, and this seems to be in response to Nintendo's lawsuit against Pocket Pair. This has been a heated topic all year long, and whether or not Palworld infringed on Pokemon's copyright. However, after Nintendo did their own research, they wound up filing a lawsuit, but maybe not what people were necessarily expecting. Instead, it was for gameplay patents, specifically with things like throwing a ball to capture a monster. Well, apparently Pocketpair has now decided to ditch this mechanic in Palworld. You can see written up here on Insider Gaming, they said, Pal Spheres work like Pokeballs and capture and summon pals in Palworld. However, after version 0.3.11, the Pal Spheres will have a different activation. Now, whenever a player uses a Pal Sphere, their pal will be summoned near the player without them needing to throw the sphere. Also, the new update will display a reticle while aiming. So, I think what Nintendo is doing is ridiculous. To me, and this is just my opinion, but to me, it's one thing to go after Palworld if they found that they actually, in fact, copied some of their Pokemon designs. But I don't really like the idea of gameplay patents being enforced. I think that's a very dangerous precedent to set for the game industry because this could encourage publishers to create all kinds of mundane gameplay patents. In reality, most games draw inspiration from something else. So I think it's a little bit saddening to see Pocketpair back down from something like this, but at the same time, I do also understand that they're trying to strengthen their case in court. Okay, so let's go talk about Xbox and their future. I think out of all the big three, Xbox by far has the most questions to answer. You know, they're going into this direction that we've never really seen from a console manufacturer before. They revealed this more multi-platform, but not completely multi-platform strategy earlier this year. And while it first started off with mostly older and smaller games that could maybe benefit from a player boost, it was when they revealed Indiana Jones and the Great Circle as a timed exclusive when a lot of people started to think, okay, this is a little bit strange. Well, Xbox's Matt Booty was asked about this in a roundabout way, and his response, I think, at least gives us more information about why they chose to announce Indiana Jones for PlayStation. He said, "We are very much making the exclusivity and windowing decisions on a game-by-game basis, and each of our studios is in a little bit of a different position. There's also the production timeline on a game, so the decision on spacing comes there first. We want to make sure there's a great experience for our Xbox players, and then the gap between when it becomes available on PlayStation is as much a production decision as it is anything else. This is a game that was in production before we acquired Bethesda even." And it's that last line there that I think is just so interesting. He almost paints this decision as, well, it was in development before we came along, and there were prior plans before we turned it into an exclusive. Of course, Indiana Jones is a licensed IP after all, and Disney has their hands on some of those initial conversations and how it would release. So this is kind of a unique situation compared to some of their other games. And that seemingly, or at least based on his comment here, weighed in on their decision to make it multi-platform. Now, I'm still in the belief that they did this game a bit of a disservice and kind of crippled themselves in the process with an early PlayStation announcement. Now, maybe that has something to do with Disney and their input. I'm not going to fully blame Microsoft on this without knowing the internal discussions, but by announcing a PlayStation version before releasing it on Xbox and PC, to me, isn't exactly a great way to sell a game, hardware, or subscriptions. That just kind of encourages a lot of people to wait a few extra months to play it. So I feel like the better strategy for them would have been a one-year exclusive with a PlayStation announcement right around June of next year. Now, that's just my own opinion, but the other part about this statement goes back to that game-by-game basis comment. That seems to be Microsoft's new favorite phrase when it comes to their games. But reading between the lines, it does kind of seem like their newer games that's been in development post-acquisition are more likely to get the exclusive treatment. So games like Fable, Gears of War E-Day, Perfect Dark, and games like those will launch as an Xbox exclusive. And they'll also likely remain exclusive for a long time, if not permanently. And I think that's ultimately because exclusives are still, in fact, important to their business. This idea that their consoles aren't important to them, I just don't think rings true. And the reason I say that is because they still have a lot of money tied into their console business. I mean, they have more than 30 million Game Pass subscribers, with the majority of those coming from their console fan base. They also get a portion of every third-party game sold on Xbox as well. So it seems like they're not going to just completely abandon their exclusive strategy anytime soon, but it is still a very different strategy compared to their rivals. And I think that's where it'll be interesting to see if they can balance a console business all while having this very unorthodox approach to their exclusives. I mean, there's potential to make a lot of money doing it this way if they can pull it off. But how this impacts their future consoles is where I think there's still a big question mark, or at least from fans. We know that they have a super powerful console in development. They're also testing their own handheld console, and, can they convince fans to buy into those products all while having this strategy that they tend to be a little bit vague about? I think that's the question that a lot of fans have right now, but I think as long as they can deliver on the Game Pass front, if they can continue to make that be a standout deal, all while still having good hardware, and if they can at least have some enticing exclusives, that might be enough for a large portion of gamers to buy in, but only time will tell. This is by far the most unique strategy that we've seen from a console manufacturer, so let me hear your opinion about all of this in the comments below. Now, one last thing before we go, the Game Awards hype continues to ramp up, and that's because Jason Schreier chimed in by saying that there's at least 2 games will be there that's going to make people go, quote-unquote, holy crap, I can't believe these things are here. Now, the way he worded this almost kind of makes it sound like these are dream game type of announcements. Games like Shenmue 3 and the Final Fantasy VII Remake. These are games that fans dreamed about for years and years and years. Now, that's just kind of my interpretation about how he worded this. Maybe I'm looking too far into this, but I mean, if it is, there's a lot of games that could fall under that category. There's games like Bloodborne Remastered, there's Final Fantasy IX Remake, a new Banjo-Kazooie game, there's Half-Life 3, a new Spyro game, and I think you can kind of see where I'm going with this. These are all dream games that fans have been asking for such a long time. Either which way, though, even if he's not referring to a dream game type of announcement, it sounds like there will be some pretty big reveals at the Game Awards this year, and that's something that we keep hearing about from reputable sources. So even if the pacing is off, which, I completely expect from a Jeff Keighley event, I'm still looking forward to seeing what gets announced here. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to subscribe and peace out.